see there's obviously some interest in culture and who defines it and how do you keep it from going there. So since most of you don't know who I am, I thought I'd just give you a little bit of background on here. I'm from Tyler, Texas, over in East Texas, so why would they let a hick from East Texas come and talk about this thing? I've had a few years at this, and so sometimes age gives you a lot of wisdom. I think they said wisdom was having a lot of experiences, and being wise is making a lot of failures and a lot of challenges, so you go through that. So began on this journey for the culture. We all have a culture. We'll talk about that in our workplace. Sometimes the culture's gotten away from me. Sometimes we've been able to bring it back. We actually started a charitable clinic in Tyler, and I'll tell you a little bit about the services we do there. Is very similar to all of what y'all do. Started out with just about 4 or 5 of us in the clinic, a lot of volunteers, and then it's grown through the years. And now we've added some various things, and so I have a fairly large workforce. And so this idea of culture and who's defining it and how do you spend time on that has become a big part of what we do. Along the journey, as I first started out, like a lot of you guys, you start in this career, and nobody really gave you the template of how to do this. So you start reading and learning a lot of stuff. Patrick Lencioni, of course, is one of the big gurus on this, but also as I was reading through some of Peter Drucker's stuff, it talks about, and you've heard this before, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I thought it was a great line, and then you lived in this business long enough and you realize that is so true. I love doing strategy. How many of y'all in here like doing strategy and coming up with plans and all these great stuff? I love doing strategy. God's funny, though. He's let me do a lot of strategy, but most of the things that have worked have not been my strategies. They're things that he comes and does otherwise. But I've definitely learned how allowing silos, allowing different cultures to set up, sooner or later they will come and bite you. And so in this journey, you read a lot, you try to apply a few things. And so we're going to show you some things. We've really focused a lot on culture. I'll tell you a little bit about what we do and why the culture is such a big deal. These are some of the buildings that we have. We have an adult clinic, which is in the middle. That's what we started in 2003. We see, between it and our pediatric clinic, something around 20,000 patient visits or so. There's about 60 employees between just the medical side of things. We took in the pediatric clinic over here a couple of years ago. So not only have we started with a small staff, now have a big staff, but also inherited a staff. And I think the best way that you deal with an inherited staff is apparently you run a lot of the people off. So you define the culture, and some of them didn't like it. So I found that not to be uncommon. One of the weird things that we do have 3 thrift stores in town. So it does produce a very nice income for us, but that also gives us 90 separate type of employees, and these are very retail-ish like employees, which make life a little bit more challenging. So all total, we have about 150 employees. So when we're trying to capture the culture, we've tried to blend the same culture. We've tried to let some of them have a little bit of different cultures, and we can talk about that. We also got a couple of questions that came in on the poll, so hopefully we'll answer these as we go along. The 2 questions was, I believe, I have them here. Should I have that up? Here they are. So one was, how can a leadership team control who controls the culture of the organization? So hopefully we'll address that in here. And how do strategies for setting culture differ between large and small organizations? And my first easy answer is that when you're small, you can have a bigger say about who's out there. Is when it gets bigger, it's harder to, you probably have less defined when it's small, and it really gets critical as you get larger. So let's talk about a little bit about culture. There's only 167 different definitions of culture, so that makes life fun trying to figure out what's going to be our definition of culture. Everybody has a culture. You either define it or somebody else is defining it for you. We've had both of those. We've definitely had it defined for us. We've had silos form up, and they kind of creep in there. Sometimes you don't know. I come from East Texas, so in East Texas, there's only 2 answers when you ask how you're doing at church. You're either doing fine or you're busy. And so when you see the staff and they smile and they say, I'm doing fine, that means absolutely nothing, but we all think they're happy and just enjoying life like we are, only to find out you learn things later on. So some of the definitions that we came up with is the company culture represents the living, breathing persona of your company, capturing the norms, the values, the behaviors that define the very character of your business. And what we finally defined it as is how we behave based on what we believe. And so this is when people come and join your organization, they either adopt in your culture or they start bringing their own culture and adding to that as well. So that's what we're going to kind of use as our definition of culture. I figured since we were at CCHF, we should ask, are there any biblical reasons for culture? Shouldn't it just be people be whoever they are, come just as you are? So here were some different verses that I found that I think kind of applies to this. There's no specific verse that says you should have a great work culture because Jesus said X, right? But it's just kind of implied both as a church and the body of church. The verse from Colossians 3 here where it talks about whatever you do, work at it with all your heart is working for the Lord, being very mission driven and making sure that you're bringing that in there as the mission, not for human masters, since you'll receive an inheritance. There's Proverbs 16:3, commit to the Lord whatever you do. So it's the people we're bringing on is the culture that you're going to commit everything you have, or you just kind of passing between jobs or coming there. And then this verse in Psalms, how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. So not addressing people that are out of sync with culture does not create unity, not bringing it up. I don't know how many of you are like this, but conflict was not my number one thing that I like addressing, but I think as I've worked more and more with culture, I definitely get to the hire slow, fire fast rule very much. When you have a mix that does not fit culture, it just has never, ever worked for us. Sooner or later, it'll up and bite you. And just as one body, the one has many parts, but all its many parts form one body. The idea that we have all the right people and all the right parts is a big part of culture as well. So we kind of start with the very basics of culture. I'm assuming most people have this, but our mission, vision, and our values. How many of y'all have that? You'll probably have it up on a big wall somewhere, right? We're all proud of them. We have our mission, our vision, and values. This is what should drive everything every time we have an interview process. The thing that got us is, and we really strive this as well, this should drive how you hire, fire, recognize, and reward people. And when we started surveying our staff, do you hire, fire, recognize, and reward based off that? It got like, well, we bring it up in hiring sometimes. Firing, we just, did they do it or not? Recognize, yeah, some. Reward, every once in a while we have a culture champion or something like that. It's been a slogan that we've had throughout. Do we hire, fire, recognize, and reward? And when you start looking through everything you have, is this mission, vision, and values in there? If you're saying you're late to work, how does that fit in your mission, vision, and values? What is it that you have in there? I also challenge a lot of us. We're all happy. It depends on who kind of got your mission, vision, and values. When we first did it, when you're small, we had a small group of us get together. We came up with 5 or 6 words. We worked through it. We're really proud of it. Those words didn't always have actionable items to it that made it very clear. That's something we've really worked hard to do. And people you'd say, well, let's recognize people for stuff. And it got very difficult. One of them we had, being a good Christian organization, we had reverence for Christ. And that sounded great. We're going to revere Christ. He's going to lead in everything we do. And then we started saying, how do you see that? How do you recognize that? And we never got anybody nominated for reverence for Christ. Not because they weren't spiritual, but there was just no actionable items that you could define with that. And so I really, especially when you get to values, if you can't say what it looks like, you can't hire, fire, recognize, and reward based off of that. And so the question is, who kind of put yours together? So the first time we did it, we all had the leadership team, came up with some great words. We were all happy about them. We all cheered them. Our thrift stores, they kind of went off on their own thing. They came up with their own core values, which always kind of bugged me a little bit. We've now combined them together. And so we went back through and said, let's take a whole look at this again. And we began to interview different groups within there. And my theme was, I want my mission, vision, and values to go from my dock workers to my docks. That it needs to be the same no matter where you are throughout the company, which gets really tough when you go across that. So these are kind of the 3 that we use. Everybody has their own. We have our kingdom purpose, loving those in need with excellent care, to point them to Jesus. We have our mission statement, which tells what we do. And then our vision statement, which took us a long time, but we're the idea that it actually starts with the serve and honor Christ. To serve and honor there is by inspiring our neighbors to live the abundant life. There's always something else needed to make them do the abundant life. So as we're bringing people in, this is kind of like a basis, right? So this is just the beginning. We're going to kind of go from there out. So everybody probably has those. If they're on a wall, you know where they are. 2 people in your office probably know where they are, maybe could point to them. And when you have your annual deal, maybe one of them can get half of one of them right. So just getting them on a wall is just like a first step. Got to write them down. You got to have them. But what we want to talk about a little bit today is how do you define it? How do you make sure those get ingrained? And that is work. All right, so if you're looking for any quick answer today, you're not going to find it. It's going to take work. I'm going to tell you, I think we're on the road, but this is always a process, and every time you hire somebody new, you're challenged whether you can do that. So we interviewed all of our different staffs at different places. They came up with phrases and words. We said, what do we look like when we're at our best? What do we do when we're really hitting our strides? And so we came up with a document that's very unique to us. One of the people said, well, when we do it, it's like dropping the mic. It's like dropping the boom. And we like that so much, we made that our document. So we asked, when are you bringing the boom? We're Bethesda, so it kind of alliteration works there a little bit. But what we did is we came up with 3 very simple ones. We deliver the unexpected, we engage our community, and we value every person. Now that's fine, you can put that on a sign, but what we then did is came up with 14 very specific things that are actionable items that we can go to with this. Of course, we all put the verses with it, but things like, others first, or little things are the big things, or, these are all phrases that they came up with, just being excited and energized by simply being together. Well, you can kind of address that with people. And then when we used to kind of reward or do annual evaluations, we would just have a blanket. Does this person exemplify the core values? Yes or no? And now we've kind of broken it down and says, do they do the deliver the unexpected? And if there's one of those that sticks out that they don't do, don't have to say all or none, but say, you know what? We really need to have a conversation about the little things or the big things, right? Or we need to have this others first. Your job's great, but all your other people are struggling over here and you never acknowledge them. So that was kind of unique. That's what ours is. Hopefully you have that as well. But now we know this is working a lot better. Because when we had the store, the one of them they had at the store was exceeds expectations. And so one of the things I would challenge y'all is bring me your core values. I will figure out how to use them against you unless you have actionable items. I'm really good at that. People hate it when I do that. One of them we had at the store was exceeds expectations. Exceed expectations, which sounds great. Except we never defined whose expectations and what expectations. So I have 2 people. One shows up 10 minutes early every day, and one shows up 10 minutes late. They both show up on time. Who exceeded expectations? The one who's always late, right? So it was kind of, until you define what those were, they became nice words. We knew what they were when we made them. I really challenge you, if you don't have very actionable items, what it looks like. If you can't do that, if you get to reverence for Christ and say, well, maybe they pray out loud. You're like, really? Is that what it is? Is that kind of, like that you want to see certain things, but what character traits would come out with that? And I really challenge y'all in doing that. We developed this with the staff. We went below the leadership team. It took a long time. I thought it would be really quick. We met in small groups. We met with dock workers. We met with the retail people at the store. We met with the MAs, the front desk. It took a while. We had a couple of different people on it. We had the same questions we asked them. Began to get some of these quotes. So some of these are directly quoted. This others first mentality was huge. Some of them made the cut. Some of them didn't. You're like, A lot of them like to use the word family, and that was an interesting one that we worked through. Family gets tricky. It's hard to fire your family. It's hard to do things with family. And so we ended up not using that one in there, but building relationships, opportunities to eagerly learn. So as we're reviewing in our annual review, we can go through these and say, hey, we see a lot of these that you're doing, but what about this one over here? Tell me how you're living this one out. And you'll all have your own different values. I can't tell you what the actionable ones are, but that's the ones that we do. And then the other thing that we do that I highly recommend. A lot of people do this. We started it with a disc, but getting some kind of profile of understanding who the people are. We've actually invested into a program. My daughter's here, so she knows way more about the dots than she wants to know, but there's a thing called Culture Index that we use. Some people use Enneagrams, which can be helpful, especially if you really train on them. DISC, we did them, but we weren't really trained on them. Culture Index, we've actually invested a lot of money into that. And what it does is it just allows people to do some kind of screen to say, what is this person? Is this job going to be the right fit? Or, everybody can interview in a certain way. Part of the reason we went with, and I'll just show you mine, which tells you absolutely nothing, but it tells seven very specific things about me, and it also tells me how I do both at work and in my core value, my core self. But we use this in hiring, making sure the person is a right fit. What skills and personality are we going to want to know in certain jobs? My front desk may be a little bit more outgoing, but maybe not totally always talking. Maybe too much talking is a problem. Maybe we need somebody more analytical or detailed or more self-starter or somebody more of a team player. So this tells me it tells me how much of a team player versus self-player, how much external processor or extrovert I am, how much of a kind of a change person am I or not. So this is a service we pay for. It's not, there's a lot of different ones out there. I'm not trying to do it. It's the only one you can use before you hire somebody. So we really like that. So we were having a lot of trouble screening. A lot of people say, oh yeah, I love people. And then you find out they don't, or, they have something in their job and you're like, really, I'm not that much of a go-getter, but their resume said that. This kind of pulls it out because it's only 2 questions and it's just a bunch of words and they don't know how to. And so it also comes with a consultant. And so we can call and say, hey, we have this interview. Tell us what's going on. As my daughter knows, the phrase that I have is the dots don't lie. And so almost always when we've had this, he said, well, and I'll give you an example. We had an HR director and he had what's called a lower A dot. So he's not more of a salesman and go out and get somebody. He's more of a team player and have them come into him. And they said, he's going to have a trouble going out and being aggressive, trying to go get people, but he'll be great with your people that are in. And that's exactly what happened. And so we said, is that okay? Is that somebody we can live with or not? So I really would try to get the team characteristics and the dynamics that way. You have an introvert and you have me up there saying, let's bring them up here and recognize them. And they're like, please don't make me come up again. Can have a big factor on that. So there's a lot of them that are out there. If you're not using one of those or you say I have a lot of turnover, we were having a hard time getting really good hires. And now we can use this kind of as a screen, because if they're like 30% match, we probably won't even interview them because their job is just so much different. I need a super detailed accountant, and they're a very non-detailed, just fly by the seat of their pants person. You're like, yeah, that's probably not going to work for my finance person. So there's a whole bunch of them out there. I know people use Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, but we also use this to manage people, and that's why it also becomes very valuable for us. So this is how this person wants to be managed. I want to be talked to, not directed to. I don't want to be on my own a little bit, and I don't want to have a lot of it in writing. You can just tell that from reading that. Y'all can't, but I can pretty quickly on there. So if they were the opposite of me, you might want to write things down or send an email, and that will help in your culture because that kind of gets people all frustrated. All right, so let's get down to how do we define out our own culture, or any questions on that up till now. All right, so you're going to see here a few different book references through here. I know some of y'all like to read. There will be some resources at the end of this talk. First Break All the Rules is one of the best books out there ever on management. Let me just tell you, if you want to get your culture right, you got to get your management right. There's no way around it. I don't care what you put on the wall. You miss management. People leave managers. They don't leave clinics. They don't leave missions. They leave managers. Always 100% shown that way, almost 100%. First Break All the Rules is a book from the Gallup organization, and what they did is they went and surveyed a lot of people, and they came up and they asked them, they have 12 different questions, but the 6 most important questions they came up with are these. And if these are not able to be answered, you're going to have trouble in your culture. There's just no way around it. It's in the book. It's all through there. It's an older book. It's been around a long time. Do I know what's expected of me at work? One of the phrases that we love using now that I've run across recently is clarity is kindness. And I'm in the South, and we don't always want to be clear. We want to hope that you figure out what I mean. I don't want to have to really directly say it. I know some in the Northeast are like, what are you talking about? We say it directly. But in the South, they're like, well, of course you were supposed to do that in your job. And so we've really pushed on this to make sure that when we bring you on, it's clear exactly what you're doing. I hate job descriptions. I like things to be like, what's my top 3 things to do? Like, what specifically do you want done? Do you want me to raise money, write grants, go visit people? If you give me like 12 things, you can't do them, right? So is it clear what's expected of me at work? How will I promote? What is it that's going to be recognized? Do I have the materials and equipment I need to do my work right? We have a lady who we've now hired. She was a part of our staff. We moved her into a position of culture engagement and retention. And so her culture and engagement, I guess, is actually her title. And she was pointing out that the work environment can be just a huge deal, not just the materials, but what does it feel like being in that work environment? Are there papers stuffed everywhere? Does it feel like a cheap clinic? Does it feel like a nice clinic? And the weird thing about this is when you survey people, there's usually something small, like, oh, I don't have to go buy a lot of stuff. You just want a bulletin board or somewhere to put a picture up or something like that. And you're like, well, I could get that in a heartbeat. So do they have all the equipment and materials? I know we all struggle with that. Do I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day? And this is exactly why when we do that culture index is really big for us, because we know how you're wired. And most people, interestingly, will even try to, we say, hey, we have a new job opening. And they go, great, I want that job. And you're like, this is so not you. Let me just help you right now. Like, we can interview you, but we know pretty much how they're wired. And they consistently come out that way. Sometimes you get a surprise because they'll be real quiet at the clinic and you find out they're a lot more extroverted, a lot more verbal processing. You're just not seeing the whole self. And because it checks also their core value to their work value, you can also tell if they're adjusting greatly or not. Like, we can tell when people are stressed and about to leave us. So that's also a cool thing with that. The last 7 days, have I received recognition or praise for doing good work? This has been our challenge. I'm going to go through a little survey that we do. This is the challenge that we're getting hit with right now, that there's not enough recognition. And one of the challenges that we have, and we're trying to adapt this into our culture, is getting where it's not just managers who do recognition, but each other. When you look at all the books on recognition, the peer-to-peer recognition is more valuable than having a boss or somebody come in or, hey, it's your day, we're going to recognize you for that. So, and then the last one is, there's someone at work who encourages my development. So are you investing into people's development? What's your culture for that? One of the questions I would have, or several of the questions would be, what's your culture of failure? What's your culture on development? Is it like that's just too expensive and we don't invest in people? Or do we try to do that? And because managers make or break us, we have almost every manager in some kind of leadership development in one way, shape, or form. It's a big, big thing that we do. All right, and so the other thing that we do, so this is all great, but what you have to do is then you have to go start asking people, do we meet these things? And it requires a repetitive asking. So we do an annual survey we'll talk about with the Best Christian Workplace. We now have a lady who's geared to do this, but HR could do it, CEO could do it. You could have your volunteer coordinator, you could have your charge of operations go, hey, I'm going to talk and start having some one-on-one conversations, or I can meet in a group. We have several of them where we meet in a group, and a lot of things will flush up, come out, particularly with our MAs or dental assistants who are real quiet in a big group, but we get them one-on-one and they start doing things. And then the other thing is, once you get your mission, vision, values, you got to communicate it. You got to figure out how you're doing it. So putting it on the wall is step one, but that won't get it out. We do a weekly email trying to communicate and update with everyone. We have a quarterly, a lot of y'all are doing this, I know, a quarterly clinic and Hangers of Hope's meeting where we kind of go over things, the information, HR, but also there's always a cultural focus. I started doing a once a month, what we call town halls. So I will go and meet with I guess you would call it selected. There's several people from different areas representing different areas. And as the CEO, just sit down with them, ask how's it going, see what's happening, try to get their feedback, give any information out, let them ask any questions like, Who was the crazy person that came up with this idea? Where did this come from? How did you get started? Whatever else. So it allows us to kind of find things out that may be really bugging them. And sometimes it's very, very simple, right? Like, hey, the dress code says we can't wear this, but I have this I want to wear. And you're going, well, that makes sense. Why do we have that? We didn't realize it was so particular there. We have with our culture, the gal that heads up our culture, she has quarterly meetings as well with these folks. We have a very specific orientation. I'll be honest, we did not do orientation well for a lot of years. I'm just going to lay it out there. We just did not. You came on, and the worst orientation were those that were volunteers. Those were probably the worst orientation we had. So they were volunteers. You know all about us. Now you're part of the staff. Good luck. Here's HR. Go get it. So now we realize, particularly, we have multiple locations. We have 6 different locations where people work. And so we have once a month orientation where they come in, they get the culture talk again because they got it on hiring, they got it on interviewing and hiring, they get it also on the orientation. I come and do a little bit of a history talk. We talk about that as well, and then they do all their HR stuff. They also get to see the clinic because we do have a thrift store, and our patients, the people that we're hiring there are eligible to be our patients as well, and so we bring them over there. And then every time, another great book, by the way, is by the Heath boys, is Moments. And so one of the things we try to do is so most people remember their first and their last day of work. Everything else is between that. So how you leave and how you come on, it has bigger impact, and it does as well. So we make sure that when they come on new, we have a group of people that always take out a new employee to lunch, especially in our clinic area. Probably y'all have your own routine of welcoming in there, but that first day is kind of big. We used to say, hey, glad to have you. Sit over there. Somebody will come and talk to you. And then later on, the HR will show up. It's kind of a surprise. We didn't know you were here. Man, that's been a focus over the last few years. And we think it's making a difference into what we're seeing, but still, it's a tough deal. So, and then the other thing that we started a couple of years ago is what's called stay interviews. So, like I said, I have a lady who heads this up, and she does our culture and engagement, and she goes around and she'll do one-on-one questions. And so, some of these slides, I'm trying to show you a little bit of what we do. She's found these questions to work, but she would just take somebody, a dock worker, somebody from the sales floor. She'll take an MA over here. She'll take a dental assistant. Sometimes I'll do the provider. Sometimes she'll do those. And we'll just ask them questions, what do you look forward to? If the answer is nothing, you got a problem. You got employees leaving, right? Like, I just look forward to the end of the day. You're like, whoa, we need to talk further. And each of these has questions just to kind of, I love it here. It's great. It's wonderful. And then that leads to, well, what's so great and wonderful about it here? And what makes it great? What are you learning? What do you want to learn? What can we train you on? What would you like to know more of? Why do you stay here? And we fleshed one of these out. Why do you stay here? And I think it's up there. Yeah, when was the last time you thought about leaving us and what prompted it? And that's scary. We found some answers on that have flushed things out that I needed to know, and I didn't do that. I'll give you so we're down in the South, and so we usually don't bring politics into stuff, but apparently one of the days I missed the morning devotional was at another location. Somebody came in and they were all excited about Trump winning. Only problem is we had a lot of people who are either DACA, family of DACA, or immigrants. And that kind of kept some people from wanting to come to our devotional at that point. And it was like, you talk about affecting your culture, without asking these questions, it was like, whoa, that politics can go wherever you want, but it doesn't come in the door, right? That's, whoever you vote for, that's up to you. I don't care, but we're here to serve patients, and we want people to draw in. And then we have one-on-one meetings with our managers with their employees once a month, and we found that to be really key. That's taken us a long time to get going as well, because everybody's busy, nobody has time, but yet we've had to do it both at the stores and there, and then they have a series of kind of questions they go through. So that's kind of our stay interviews there. So these are done different ways. I'm in a business group, and so there's a lot of entrepreneurial guys in this group, and some of them will have their HR do it for a month. What we're doing is we're trying to pick apart probably like 2 or 3 a week. That's about how many she emotionally can handle. And so she's working them through 2 or 3 a week, just different areas. and different. So, and I'll show you in a second, we have a survey that we do called Best Christian Workplace. And I really, if you're not asking questions, not doing interviews, or not surveying, I promise you have no idea how your culture is. And I promise you do not know who it is that's not happy at your place. Because every time we do it, it's not the one I think it is. And so now when we get surveys back, somebody will go, oh, I know who answered that. And I bet you don't. And it's usually right. It's like, oh, they seem kind of grumpy. No. You know they're not happy. It's this other person over here who's quiet. That's the one that's giving you problem. But we do this. Some places will do it with HR. We've liked it that our culture and engagement person does it because they can find out information and it doesn't immediately have to go into an HR file. If they find something's big, my manager's terrible, their people are not nice to me, well, that goes up real quickly. But a lot of times it's small things or things going on in their family with that as well. We also have a service where we have a chaplain service that comes by and visits with our staff, and when they permit them to share with us, we sometimes will find out some of the family stuff as well. So we try to invest a lot in there into what we do. So meeting with the supervisor is big. And then we, like I said, 2 years ago off our survey, our big focus was on communication. This year it's been on recognition. So we developed this, what we call our boom, letting people know. So this is stuff we're trying to encourage not only the managers, but also our staff, whatever you want to call it, personalize it up. The only thing it doesn't do is it doesn't stick. So if it was on a sticky note, that would be great. But you have to tape it, but you can write there, and then people can start putting this on their areas and stuff, saying, hey, look, I'm kind of one of these guys that stand out. So we've been using that once a quarter. We're down in the South, so we stole a Cajun word called lanyap. Hard to spell, fun to say. And so it means a little something extra. So I don't think we have any Louisiana people here, but, oh, we do. Well, there you go. We call it lanyap. I know other people, there are great debates how you say it, but it means a little something extra. It's kind of caught on. So we recognize somebody who's delivered the unexpected, engage our community, and value every person. And the reason why I think we're making headway is when we started our cultural award, we would get exceeds expectations and said, this person does nice work. They're very nice. They're hardworking. And you're like, well, that's kind of hard to put in there. Now they check the block. They say, they have an others first mentality. The other day they did, and it's a very descriptive deal. We get a very nice, when we do our lineup nominations, we get about 30 or 40 of those a quarter. So people are starting to do it and getting very specific. So we can recognize not just the one person who wins at the clinic and at the store, but we also can recognize everybody who gets nominated. But we make a real big deal about the ones that win. And so finally, my medical side's getting a little competitive. The dental ones have won a few times, and they're like, what do we have to do to get better, recognition? And so we kind of described it as a way, and, we encourage people when you give these notes, you also should be doing line-ups as well. And then, of course, the baseline is hopefully everybody's doing their day of profession, the MA day, the nurse's day, the made-up doctor's day, the front desk, whatever you do. It's kind of a baseline that you ought to be doing. So we do that, but I don't think we get a ton of credit. We just get negative points if we didn't. And then when people come on, we also do this interest survey. We're still learning how to use this better, but as they're hired on, we have them fill this out so that they can kind of tell us what they like. So later on, when we want to recognize them, I'll give you a small example. I have a relative who sent me a wonderful Starbucks card. It was very nice. I've never drank coffee in my life. Don't plan to drink coffee in my life. My wife appreciated it, but kind of the idea, if I send an employee and say, you're the greatest employee ever, here's your Starbucks card, and she goes, I don't drink Starbucks, or here's coffee, or here's chocolate, or here's what you like, or maybe a sports team or something that we could kind of do that. That's what we do. So that's kind of through that. I want to take just a few minutes and walk through the survey that we have. There's going to be a couple of busy slides here, and I apologize about that up front, but we're going to pick apart a few things. But we go through what's called the Best Christian Workplace Survey. I don't know if anybody's ever done that or not. It's something that you can pay to have done. They ask, and you have to have a lot of your employees fill out that survey, like 90%, to even get recognized. And it goes, and there's anonymous surveys, and they ask a lot of questions. And part of the reason why is we just really want to know how people thought. You need some kind of anonymous survey, some way to get information back. One-on-one interviews have been very helpful with stay interviews. Interviewing in groups have been very helpful. You start getting a pulse like, ooh, Just the other day, we interviewed our MAs and found out they weren't getting enough recognition from the medical staff. So what do you think I did? I sent a personal challenge out to the medical staff and said, that's not the culture we want, right? You're getting anxious every so often, so you blame the MAs, which is common, right? It's either the front desk or the MAs get blamed. It's always the case. Never the doctors, right? Never the nurse practitioner, never the PAs, never I took too long in there. Somebody messed my schedule up. We talked about that a little bit in our executive session about all the scheduling. But you do want to try to find out what's going on. So I think the best Christian workplace for us, there's 150 some odd employees. And so we had, it's somewhere around $3,000 to $5,000 to do this, but they give a report, they give you feedback, and then they give you, it got a little more expensive because we wanted reports for all of our different sections so we could look at all the medical clinic or all the pediatrics, or all the dental. You have to have 10 or 15 people in it to get an actual report. So this is what kind of some of the reports look like, just so you can kind of see. We get an executive summary. It tells you where we are. I wouldn't show you this unless we were flourishing, but I think if we'd have done it a few years ago, we might have been in the blue. I talked to a guy I'm in a group with from Boys and Girls Club, and they said, we started in the blue, we started identifying our problems, and now they're in the green. It compares you to churches and everything else, lets you look at different groups. Our highest group actually was one of our thrift stores, more so than the clinic, which would surprise me thinking of missional, how they drew that. We've done it now for 2 years, and so we can get a comparison. This looked great until we looked at it and said 7 or 8 or higher, only leadership has declined. Most of that came out of one of my Hangers of Hope stores, one of our thrift stores, but it identified something we thought was there, but that's definitely an area we don't want to see dropping down, right? And so this year we focused a lot on recognition. Last year we focused on communication, and you can see the big jump that happened there. This year's a little bit about recognition. I don't know that we'll ever get rewarding compensation as high as they want, but we also know, and it also gave us an opportunity to try to explain what ours is. So our culture is, this is how we do it, this is how it's decided, and this is where it comes out. So, and then it comes in with a lot of open-ended statements, which really helped us out. These are very anonymous. This is the one everybody starts trying to guess who sent it, and I say don't even try as you go through those, but we get those as well. And then some of them, some of the questions they'll have on there, like here, you know, that's a very busy slide. You can see the red is kind of gone down. The green, it compares you to the percentile rank as all companies, and then your organization. And since we've had a couple of years, we can see if we're going up or down. Just a few of the questions that are up there, I'll just read these off. It says, fellow staff and employees are highly committed to excellence in their work. I'm satisfied with the opportunities I have to use my spiritual gifts in my role, so it's kind of a little bit more spiritual there. I'm unsatisfied with the recognition I receive for doing a good job. And then there's, you know, it kind of goes through again and then picks apart. There's some very specific, leaders exhibit the fruit of the Spirit. And because we had such an issue at one of our Hangers store, that came up, but it wasn't universally just in one place. This is where we could start going and saying, hey, what kind of culture do we want to have? What do we want our employees saying about us? Do we want us to be showing the fruit of the Spirit? We should be able to get this one and begin to do it. It triggered a lot of group meetings. We had some stuff that came up with my provider, so I was able to start having one-on-one with very specific questions as well, because there were some cultural things that were coming up, and we wanted to define it. One of them had to do with our paid time off, which shocked me, which was really pretty good. And we kind of went through it, and some of them were wanting to know about sick time and some other things. So that's kind of the survey that we use. I'll end with this and a couple of resources, but these are my lessons that I've learned from doing the process. And I'm pretty confident these are all true. So they're just gold. So never assume you know how others feel unless you ask. That is probably the one biggest lesson I've learned, because everybody's smiling, I think, are happy. I'm loving it. My motive for being here, I'm fired up. The culture was, I wrote all those terms. They're all me. I'm all excited. And then we started interviewing people, and some are like, well, it's a job. I've looked for another job, other things. People rarely read what is emailed or put on the wall concerning culture. It's a start. But if you're not talking it, visiting it, and going over it on a regular basis, we put it in our devotionals, we put it in our monthly devotional or our daily devotional, we put it in some of the conversations, our huddles, things like that. We'll put an emphasis on one of those 14 we call boomlets, and so we have those as well. And then not getting everyone's input is not getting everyone's buy-in. That was a hard one I learned because I thought my first ones I put were great. I loved them. They were awesome, except I just didn't get everybody's buy-in with them. Managers make or break you, so you got to invest in them. If you're not putting a big investment into your managers, you can forget whatever you're doing as a CEO. It's just not going to go down. You must focus time and attention on culture intentionally, or it will change over time. No question about that. We've had it go all over the map, and so now we keep focusing on and coming back. And because you did a talk once at the first of the year does not mean it stays. It kind of moves, and you bring new people in. And the good will leave and the average will stay if the culture is not ideal. Let that one sink in for just a minute. Your B's and C players will live with a bad culture. Your A players will move. And then this last phrase that I ran into, sometimes B players are A players in the wrong seat. So before you start throwing people out or say we mishired on somebody, it's time to go back and reevaluate who they are. So a couple of references on here. Some of the books that I've read through the times that does it. This Culture Wins one, geared a little bit toward churches, but this really applies a lot to us. Excellence Wins from the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. He kind of defined it, and he defines it every day with them. There's 5 languages of appreciation. If you recognize the 5 language part, yeah, that's Gary Chapman in his book. They actually have physical touch in there, even though it's 1%. You get in a lot of trouble with that one. But the other 4, you might want to focus on a little bit more. And then a couple of other books here. First, Break All the Rules. And Patrick Lencioni's The Advantage kind of has all of that. The 5 dysfunctions of a team, the ideal team player, all that rest is in there as well. And then just a couple other resources that I was given. I don't use these, but this is what my gal who does a lot of this, where she comes up with ideas either for recognition day, trying to be creative, versus going, yay, Nurses Day, you get a card, and everybody's trying to make it a little bit different. So there's Right Now Media for Managers. Achieve Achievement, I believe, is a website that you can go to and get stuff there. The Gallup has a lot. That's the one who was behind First Break All the Rules. They also are behind Strength Finders. Some people like that one and try to use that one. And so that would be a little less cost. Again, if you use any of those, though, I think having used DISC initially and now using Culture Index, not having kind of an expert to kind of walk you through those can make you a little bit dangerous. So we went through a 2-day training on Culture Index, have a consultant, and he keeps telling us on that. Again, I get no commission from any of these. I'm just saying that you might want to know who your people are. Of course, Pinterest, some of y'all like going and doing that. All right, so didn't mean to do that. So with that, you may have some comments or questions. I know everybody in here has been working on culture, so you're probably going to say that's all nice, but let me tell you where it really works, and I'm fine with that as well. But we have a little bit of time for questions or comments, so anything that I covered or comments or things that may have been working in your place that I didn't cover, because I know a lot of y'all have been at this business a long time as well, and like I said, you've either inherited a culture like I did with pediatrics, it's gotten big on you when it was small, or you're still small, or you have the volunteers as well. We had the 2 questions that came up. Y'all may have comments on that. How is it different between a small and a large organization? The large, I think, takes even more, because you're not directly talking to everybody. You have to go out and visit, and you have to, if you're a CEO, you have to be out in the people, and you have to find a way to one-on-one talk with them, not just, hey, how's it going? Wonderful, great, yeah. Told you my Southerners all say, hey, it's wonderful. Everything's awesome. By the way, I'm leaving. That's the other thing I'm always worried about. As soon as I have all my staff, I know somebody's leaving. I don't know why, but it always happens that way. And then the other one, our other question was, let's see, I'll remember what that was, make sure we answer that. How do strategies for setting the culture differ between large and small organizations? And how can a leadership team control who controls the culture of the organization? Hopefully we handled that one, but it's from the moment you interview to hiring to all the huddles and everything you talk about should come to it. All the meetings should involve it, and you should hire, fire, recognize, and reward it. And if you're not recognizing and rewarding off of that, nobody's going to do it. And that one I've learned the hard way as well. We did once a year. We talk about the culture. We talk about the 5 or 6 terms. They were all excited about it. They spelled a nice, cute acronym. It was all nice, and nobody knew them the next year, and nobody was getting paid or recognized for them very much at all. So, questions or comments? Yeah. So it's interesting because so our question was, we have an engagement platform. How do we get people to go use it? Because it's all there. You're probably spending some money on it and it's all exciting. It's kind of like the signs on the wall. How do we get people to do it? The short answer is a lot of work. You're probably going to have, somebody was saying like, what's in it for me, right? Are you going to say the more you use it, we're going to randomly pick for PTO or you get a free card or something? You got to get people in the flow of doing it. We've looked at those and some of them get kind of expensive, so we couldn't figure out how to make that work. But I think making it simple, kind of repetitive, being able to have failures early, but getting some wins and just celebrate every win. I forget what change book it was, but sometimes you just gotta recognize small wins to get what you want. There was a book that had it recently. It was talking about a lady. She was a reporter, so she wrote about it, and her husband left all of his clothes all over the place, and she wanted him to pick them up, right? And so the obvious answer is pick up your dang clothes. But she went the other route, and every time he picked up just a little something, she went crazy about it, and she actually praised him into doing what she wanted. It just took a long time to do that. So you may have to praise and say, hey, we've had so-and-so do this, or maybe there's a little something we get. We're going to have a drawing for the next 5 people who do this, and they're going to have something in it. It is tough. I mean, getting people to do it, changing habits is always hard, and we just have to go back and go back and go back. It's taken us years to get 30 or 40 nominations for Line Up. First time we probably got 5, and they're all like, ugh. And so we don't have a mandatory, but yeah, it's something that comes up. And then as we're asking them, who are you recognizing? How are you recognizing them? And then when I have my town halls, I can also ask, are your managers recognizing you? Have y'all seen anybody recognize? And then I ask them to follow up, what are you doing to recognize each other? And that always quietens them down because it's always like communication and recognition. Management's doing a terrible job. Nobody tells me anything. Everything's horrible. And I'm like, well, what are you doing for communication? What? So sometimes as you challenge them to do it can be helpful. Other questions? I think we have a few more minutes, so great questions. So the question is, if you come in and you inherit a culture, how do you get buy-in? And that's a great question. I think the couple things is begin with the end in mind and make sure you're both trying to get to the right spot. Most people don't like all those core values until you start describing. If every employee looked like that, right? They, delivered the unexpected, they engaged the community, and they valued every person. What do you think? Oh, that's great. And nobody left, and everybody stayed, and they're all A players, and they're all wonderful. Like, oh yeah, that's what I want. That's what I want. Then you can start saying, well, we can't live with B players or C players, and the other one, like I said, clarity is kindness. Like, we got to be clear what is expected, what works, what doesn't work, why doesn't it work. And I think if you get in that, you'll start finding frustrations. What frustrations have you had with the staff? What frustrations have you had going on? Well, they just don't want to work, and they don't. A lot of times it ends up being something that says you either got the wrong person, the wrong systems in place, and let's go interview them and see what happens. Try to find out. We inherited the pediatric clinic. I'll say that the providers were all bought in, so I haven't lost any of them, on the medical side, but pretty much everybody but 2. I think there was 11 of them. We have 2 of the staff that are still with us, and they're marginal on the culture part, and we're getting real clear with them about what it means to stay with us, and so they're going to make or break it themselves. But sometimes you have to let some of them go, and you need to find out who those are. And sometimes just that one person leaves, the whole room just changes. Oh my gosh, and do I have stories of that one. The person left, I jacked with it for too long, and everybody's like, why'd you wait so long? And you're like, man, that person didn't fit here to save their life. So anyway, so that would be my suggestions. Y'all may have some others as well. I think somebody in the back maybe. Nope. So the question is, when we do Best Christian Workplace, how does it aggregate? You can do it kind of any way you want. You can do by gender. You can do by ethnicity, depending on what they check off. It has to have enough people in it, so they're not going to do a 3-person team and say, here's their open-ended questions. So the open-ended is just out there, I think. The rest of them come by that. So you could say, have you worked here for 3 years or less? Have you worked for more? Or maybe it's 1 year or less. So are you newer? You're more experienced? And that's the one that always surprises you. And if you do these on a regular basis, you're probably the same way. Oh, it's that new guy. He's the one that's all upset. And you find out, nope, it's the guy's been here for 10 years. He just won't leave. And he's grumpy, and he's taking people down with him, or he's bringing in silos or stuff. So that's a great question. So when you do those surveys, you can break them up in all kind of different ways. And because we have enough at like our stores, we can even do production and the sales floor or the sales between the stores, We can do, all the medical providers, it's pediatrics and adult together to get enough, or we can do all the MAs or all the dental assistants or all the pediatrics by itself. So that's why our price kind of goes up, because we're still trying to figure out what everybody is and figure out what questions to go follow up with. And that's a big part. If you do the survey and do nothing with it, it's a waste of money. But if you use that survey, put a focus, tell people what you're going to do, and then follow that up and make a difference, like that communication. I mean, we told them we were coming after them, and we're going to communicate the tar out of you, and you saw it move, right? We're hoping this year recognition, but that one's a harder one, because people get set and they're working. Well, they know I like them. We're busy. There's time to go, and it's hard to kind of do that. We all think happy thoughts, but we never write them down. Well, I tell everybody you're doing a great job. I said the power of writing it down is very, very strong. They post them up. They have them around. My dental clinic's actually the best at that. So they got them posted up all over the place, and so kind of those badges or whatever. So